Welcome back, grade 10s. We're still continuing with our discussion regarding how to answer an examination paper. We've now just completed the section A, we've looked at section B, and now we're going to have a look at section C. Right. Section C, these are the essay type questions. 2 questions are given and you must only answer 1. Now, please, I have to also caution you here. You have to answer one of the essays that is actually asked in the paper. Not just answer, oh, this is the essay I've studied and this is the one I'm going to write now in the exam. It doesn't work that way. You've got to answer one of the essays as it has been asked in the examination paper. For example, you have business cycle essay or you have a circular flow essay. And if the essay is, I've studied business cycle, but now they're just asking, discuss the markets in a circular flow or discuss the participants in a circular flow. But I studied business cycle, so now I just write the business cycle essay. You're not going to get any marks for that, right? So please answer the question that has been asked. Right. Take note. Answer the question as stated, example with graphs, without graphs, with diagrams, or without diagrams. Right, sometimes students think that if I just put in the diagram or I just put in the graph, I will get marks for that. No, you won't. You're wasting time that you would have used better elsewhere. Candidates who answer essays have a higher probability of passing the paper than those who do not answer an essay, because your essay is 1/3 of your marks. Papers out of 150, essays for 40 marks. Or in grade 10, your first examination is out of 100, essays out of 40, it is 40% of your exam. Candidates who do not attempt the essays tend to perform poorly in the examination. Candidates must structure their essays properly and write the following words as part of their answer. We want to see these words: introduction, body main part, additional part, conclusion. We want to see those. You don't get marks for having it there, but it just helps when that is there. Right. So what do I write as an introduction? So you write the word introduction on the top as shown there, and then your introduction will be a description or definition of the topic examined, right? Or the description or definition must be in a full sentence to obtain 2 marks, right? Then you have your next heading, body main part. Candidates are required to write in full sentences. Candidates need to use headings and subheadings where necessary or applicable. 8 marks are allocated for headings, merely listing of facts and examples in the main part of the essay. Only content relevant to the question will be accepted. So when we talk about 8 marks are allocated for headings, so let's say, for example, you've thought up headings and you've got 10 headings given in your body, only the first 8 marks will be given, okay? And if you are listing examples, or you're just listing facts, you're not writing in full sentences, you'll get a maximum of 8 marks. For examples also. So the headings, the examples, the listing, all together doesn't mean 8 marks for 8 examples, 8 marks for 8 headings. No, that's not what we mean. It is a total of 8 marks for all of those things. So if you've got 8 headings, you've already got your full 8 marks. I can't give you more marks for examples now because you already gotten all of your marks there. Okay, right. Additional part, which is your higher order, this is the open-ended part. You can, for the main part of the body, that you can study for, but the additional part, you don't know what's going to be asked, right? So these are mainly higher order, but limited to evaluate or examine, analyze type questions, right? Candidates who write something may be credited. However, many learners do not attempt this part of the essay. Evaluate means give positive or negative or a combination, unless, as we saw in the previous example, they specifically said you evaluate the negatives, right? In this section, the candidates may express an opinion, give examples, make suggestions, or give advice. However, they must substantiate their facts with economically sound and relevant explanations. You can't just say stuff without backing up what you are saying. And then the last part would be your conclusion. Please note, the conclusion is after the additional part. So many times students, even at matric level, still write introduction, body, main part, conclusion, and then the additional part afterwards. No, your conclusion is where everything is summed up now, right? So the conclusion is a summary related to the main part of the essay, or the conclusion is a higher order aspect of the answer and must be treated as such, right? So it doesn't have to be, your summary can be related also to your 10 marker, right? Where you're just making concluding remarks about the discussion that you've done in the additional part as well. Right, so there is an essay question. They're asking you to discuss the phases of the business cycle. That's your main part. And then the second half of the question says, or the additional part says, explain how endogenous or Keynesian factors influence economic fluctuation for 10 marks. So the main body part is for 26 marks, and then your additional part is for 10 marks. And now people jump up and say, but 10 and 26 is only 36 and the essays out of 40. Yes, because you get 2 marks for an introduction and another 2 marks for a conclusion, which makes up the 40 marks. So in order to now also showing you how to answer this particular question. So in my introduction, I'm going to describe what a business cycle is, because this is what the essay is about. It's about the business cycle. So I've written there, business cycle refers to ups and downs of economic activity in an economy, right? So that will give you your 2 marks. Full sentence there, right? Then your body main part. The main part, they ask you to discuss the phases of the business cycle. So you can start with any of the phases. You don't have to start with a period of recession. You could start with the recovery. You could start with the you can start at any point. So it doesn't matter the order in which it is done, as long as you've discussed each of the phases. And as you see, I've got my headings there, the names of each of the phases. So first off, you're going to get your 1 mark for writing period of recession or just recession, depression, another mark for writing recovery, period of expansion or prosperity. You will get your 4 marks for your headings, right? Which means we still got another 4 marks that we can use for examples or listing somewhere. Right, so during a recession, unemployment increases due to the fact that business, so you can't just say unemployment increases and leave it at that. That's listing. That's not giving a full fact. You've got to give the reason why this unemployment is increasing, okay? And the reason that it's increasing is because businesses have to lay off workers. So that's going to get you a full 2 marks there. So there is a decline in economic activity and the economy slows down, right? So what is the result of this decline in economic activity? The economy is going to slow down. Consumer spending decreases, especially on durable goods. So there I've got 3 points listed under that discussion on the recession, which means it's 2, 4, 6, and plus the heading. That's already 7 marks just for that section. Number 2, period of depression. During a depression, money is in short supply, leading to a further decline in spending. So what do we mean by further decline in spending? We see the last point under the recession says there, the consumer spending decreases. So it's just decreasing even more now. That's what we mean by the term further decline in spending. There is a negative impact on investment spending. When economic activity is at its lowest, a trough is reached, right? And there is competition for jobs and the cost of production decreases. This encourages foreign trade and leads to a recovery. So if you just said there, this encourages foreign trade, 1 mark, and not full, because you've got to say what is the result of that, right? So that means it leads, the economy will lead to a recovery. So there we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 plus the period of depression, that's 11 marks. And 11 plus 7, I've already got 18 marks, and I only need 26 for the body, right? So 18, and now I've got for the heading period of recovery and the heading period of expansion is another 2 marks. That's already 20 marks. So I only need 6 more marks to get to my maximum of 26. So during a recovery period, production increases and more jobs are created. Consumers start buying durable goods again, right? So that would be a 3 marker there, right? 2 marks for the first part of that bullet point and 1 mark for consumers start buying durable goods again. Business confidence rises and there's increased spending by firms. There is increased economic activity and the country enters into a period of prosperity. Now we explain what that period of prosperity is all about. Do you get that? So what can happen is, it is so that you can score more than 26 marks within this section, but you will only be accredited the 26 marks. So don't go to the teacher and say, oh, but you're 30 ticks here, but you've only given me 26. The maximum is 26. You cannot get more than the 26. Right. Then comes the additional part. Now, just to remind you what the additional part was, let's just go look at the question again. It says, explain how endogenous factors influence economic fluctuations, right? So, you have to first explain, like I said, think of the marker or the person marking it knows nothing. You've got to be very explicit. So, your additional part you should also treat as a mini essay where you sort of had a little introduction and a little conclusion as well, right? So they are factors that are part of the economic system, or you can say the endogenous factors are factors that are part of the economic system. The expansion phase contains mechanisms that eventually cause a contraction of economic activity. You don't have to give this exact explanation. You can explain it in your own words as long as it makes sense and that you are discussing the exogenous factors, right? Once again, you could have more than 10 marks in this section, but the maximum amount of marks you're going to be allocated with is 10. So you've got 2 for the introduction, 26 for the body main part, 10 marks for the additional. That gives you 38. And then the last part would be your conclusion, which would then be for your 2 marker there. Okay. Fluctuations in business cycle should be managed so that they affect a country's economy positively, or any other concluding remark you can give there. Right. So now that we have established the way in which to answer a question paper, we will be doing revision activities regarding circular flow and business cycles. Right. So activity 1 here says, give the economic term or concept for each of the following descriptions. Write only the term next to the question number in the answer book and do not use abbreviations. Remember, this is now your type of questions that you will find for 1.3, and you cannot use acronyms, you cannot use abbreviations, you have to answer correctly. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few moments to read through that. Just look at that very quickly, and then we will see what the answers are to each of those. Right, I'm to read through it with you quickly. 1.1.1 says, the owners of the production factors in the economy. We've had this several times already in this session. So you should know that answer by now, right? So the owners of the production factors in the economy, they we're talking about households. 1.1.2, the sector that needs to be included for the economy to be regarded as an open economy, a repeat of a question we had earlier. And obviously there, to be regarded as an open economy, you need the foreign sector. So you can just write the word foreign because the word sector is in the question. So if you just wrote foreign, you would get the mark. An economy that does not take part in international trade, which means an economy that does not have a foreign sector. So if you have a foreign sector, we just had that in the question before, it is an open economy. So if it doesn't have a foreign sector, then it is a closed economy. A model which illustrates the flows between participants in the economy. Once again, we've had this morning. That is your circular flow. Income that the participants prefer not to spend. Now that one we haven't had yet this morning. Income that the participants prefer not to spend. So think about it. You get your pocket money, but you don't spend all of it. So what do you do with the rest of it? You are saving. The market for short-term savings and loans, we dealt with the market for long-term savings and loans this morning. So the market for short-term savings and loans is your money market. Right, the next one. Activity 2, 2.1. Study the diagram below and answer the questions that follow. Once again, we're dealing with the circular flow. And can you see it is again presented to you in another format. Okay, so the question there says 2.1.1, does the above diagram illustrate an open or closed economy? So now we've got to look at what are the participants that we have here within this economy. We see there we have the government, we see there we have households, there we have firms, right? What do we have in the middle there? We have your financial institutions and we have the rest of the world, right? We have the government, we have the rest of the world, we have households, and we have firms. So, because we have the rest of the world included there, that would then make this an open economy. Name one sector from the above diagram. Oh, come on, you can name any of the sectors of the economy, right? Briefly describe the financial market, meaning what is meant by the term financial market. Okay, so obviously when you think about financial market, this is the market that deals with financial institutions, right? This is the market that, and examples of financial institutions are your banks, your insurance companies, etc. 2.1.4 asks, differentiate between injections and leakages. Just think about that for a while. Differentiate between injections and leakages. So when you differentiate, all we're asking to you is, what is an injection? What's the difference between an injection and a leakage, right? And that simply put is, injections causes money to flow into the economy, whereas leakages occur when money flows out of the economy. 2.1.5 asks, how does an increase in the household spending influence the economy? How does an increase in household spending influence the economy? Now, as I said, that's your open-ended question. That's not something you've got in a note somewhere. You've got to think about it now. How does our spending influence the economy? Right? By us spending more, what's going to happen? Because we are spending. Now, dear, you can talk from a positive perspective or a negative perspective, it doesn't matter. On the positive side, the more we spend, businesses will have to supply more, and when they have to supply more, it means they have to expand their businesses, or they've got to increase the volume of production, which could lead to jobs being created. Right? So that's the positive side. On the negative side again, the more we spend and there's not enough goods, this is going to lead to inflation again. So you can discuss it from a negative perspective or a positive perspective. Okay? And I have given you the answers there. You can see there. If households increase their spending, it will lead to more money, right? But more jobs will be created. But as I said, you could also look at it from a negative perspective if you wanted to. Okay, right. Then we've also got there 2.2, which is an 8-mark question, says differentiate between the goods market and the factor market. Now, once again, it says 2 times 4. So that means you're going to get 4 marks for discussing the goods market, and you're going to get 4 marks for discussing the factor market. And that comes straight from your notes, okay? That is the kind of answer you can get from your notes. So your goods market is the market where we trade goods and services, and you can give an example of such a market. Whereas your factor market is the market where we trade factors of production. Within the goods market, you could also talk about the different types of goods that are available, right? You get consumer goods and you get capital goods. And the factor market, as I said earlier on, you can just discuss the factors of production there, what that includes. Okay. Right, so that is your solutions to the questions on the circular flow. Now we are also going to take a look at some questions regarding the business cycles. Right, so activity 1, once again, deals with your multiple choice type of questions. Remember, with the circular flow, I looked at examples of your 1.3 type questions. With business cycles, now we're looking at your 1.1 type questions. Okay, a period when there is a general increase in economic activity is known as a or an. I'm not going to immediately give you the answer. You must think about it. Economic activity is increasing, meaning it's going up. So obviously, the only answer that we can have there is the upswing, which is B. 1.1.2, the point where economic contraction is at its lowest is called a, where the contraction is at its lowest. So we want to know what is the lowest point of the business cycle. So we're talking about turning points. So we got a top point and you got a low point. So immediately I can rule out C and D, right? Because none of those deals with the points on the cycle, but trough and peak, they do. So we're talking about the lower point, so that would be A, which is the trough. 1.1.3, employment figures in the business cycle will increase during A. Right, so during which of those phases of the cycle would we see an increase in employment? Right? There's only one possible answer there. because all of there's one that doesn't even fit, because D is the turning point, which is trough. Okay, so we've got A, B, and C left that we must choose from, and we know A and C is when there is a downswing, that both of those phases represent a downswing, and obviously in a downswing your employment figures are not increasing, they are decreasing. So the only possible answer we have there is in the recovery, which is B. 1.1.4, during an economic recession, what will increase? Well, we certainly know it is not employment. Right, so if employment isn't increasing, the opposite of employment is obviously unemployment. So your only possible answer there would be D. So your answers there, I didn't give you the answers there. Okay, so the answers there would be B, A, B, and D. Right. Question 2. Study the diagram below and answer questions that follow. Right. The questions reads, identify the letter that represents the trend line in the illustration above. So you've got to look at the trend line, you've got to know where the trend line is, and then you need to identify the letter that is there, right? And the letter for that trend line there is the letter K. And then which letter represents the trough? There's only the trough, as we know, is the bottom turning point, and that letter there is the letter D. Briefly describe the term business cycle. Once again, the definition of a business cycle, and we've seen various definitions this morning already. So this is obviously all about economic activity over a period of time, right? So anything to do with that. Explain economic activity during phase EF in the business cycle. So you've got to now know what your cycles are, and we're looking at E to F, and we see there that E to F is above the trend line. So that obviously is now the prosperity phase that we are looking at. And they just want to speak about economic activity. So what's happening with economic activity during that phase? Remember, this is now your upswing. So obviously there is lots of economic activity happening, right? And then 1.2.5, how are lagging indicators used in forecasting, right? So if you think of what is a lagging indicators are those indicators that tells us where the economy has been, right? So that gives us an indication of where the economy has come from now, right? And then question 2, which is an 8 marker, discuss the monetarist approach to the business cycle. Let's just see the answers there quickly, right? So as you see, there's the answers. I have given you the answers there, B, A, B, D, K, and then D. Successive periods of increasing and decreasing economic activity over a time series, showing repeated increasing, and or you can say any of those things for your business cycle description. And then 1.2.4, economy is growing and improving rapidly, more businesses open up. Once again, any one of those answers can be given for 1.2.4. And then 1.2.5, you need two. Any two of those can be given. Right, and then the 8 mark question asks you to discuss the monetarist approach. right? So we did the in the essay we looked at the Keynesian or the exogenous and now, sorry, endogenous approach. So now we're looking at the monetarist explanation, and this is obviously now the exogenous factors that we're looking at, the external forces that impact the markets and causes the business cycles, right? Once again, there is an explanation given to you, but you can explain in your own words. We need 4 sentences, full sentences, in order to get the 8 marks there for that question. Okay, so I did not include an essay question here for you, grade 10s. That then brings us to the end of the revision session. I hope you got a clearer understanding as to how you will answer your, how to answer an exam paper, and also how to study and prepare for your examination. Now, please remember, this term's work only deals with paper 1. Right? You have 2 examination papers in economics. It's paper 1 and paper 2. But we've only dealt with paper 1. But the layout of the paper, your section A, section B, section C is exactly the same for both paper 1 as well as paper 2. So what you need to do is, the one thing you can prepare, as I said, you can study all of your concepts specifically relating to business cycles, circular flow, with the other topics that we've dealt with are production, consumption. You know those concepts fairly well, and then you can prepare your essays also, right? So write out your essays, give them to your teacher to mark them for you. At least you can have your introduction, your body main part, and your conclusion, because we don't know what the 10 marker is that can be asked. But at least if you know how to write those sections, and then you can study those ahead of time and be fully prepared when you go into the examination. So obviously you've already done a control test for this term, so you have been exposed to an essay. So obviously you should know now that come June exam, my teacher is not going to ask me that same essay again, so I can leave that one off and study the other possible essays from that section for the examination. So, and please go and find past papers. Ask your teachers to give you past papers to work through, and make sure you try and employ these skills that I've just imparted to you this morning to make sure you understand how to deal with the concepts. Thank you.